And last but not least, to ASIFA Central, thank you very much for all your help in bringing Mr. Tom Sullivan here. We're very grateful for that. And we're going to invite both Brad and Jim up here to do the introductions and pass the wand on to you all so we can get this party extra started. And thank you very much to you all for being here.
Yay.
Thanks. I'll give it a start here, just to talk
a few
seconds with.
Yeah, I'm just
ASIFA.
arm candy. Go ahead.
And then you can do the.
And I'll do the show.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, I'm Brad Yarhouse. I'm the president of ASIFA Central, which is part of almost 60-year-old oldest animation organization in the world, and we have a central chapter that handles like the Midwest. And so we have some people who have come out today from various places in the Midwest to be here for this showing. If you were part of that, just like clap or something. All right, yay, there you are, you're back there, okay. So yeah, so just to let you know, just a few seconds to let you know that we have free showings of animation that are coming up to celebrate International Animation Day, which is an event that happens around the world on October 28th. And so on October 28th at Kendall College of Art and Design, if you want to come out and check out a 2-hour showing of animation you will not see anywhere else in the world at this point. It's stuff that's in festivals, it's stuff that hasn't been released. It'll be things from Iran to China to all over the world, because we have chapters all over the world and we share our animations and then we show them on this day to celebrate animation and world peace. So it's about celebrating other cultures and other ideas. And if you want to see that, it's at Kendall at 7 p.m. on October 28th, which is a Monday night. And if you want more information about that showing and like, you know, where at and what room and all that, I won't go through that. There are postcards out front all over the place with asifa.org on it. That's your key piece of information, asifa.org. And you can look for events there and find out about more stuff. So we're also going to be doing Site Lab this year with Art Prize. So Site Lab is going to have like 3 hours of like, I think we're going to have 4 screens full of animation from local to all over the world that we're going to be showing during that time too. So anyway, that's enough about that. Now we're going to get on to the real meat of things.
He said everything I was going to say. Hi. I'm Jim Middleton. I'm the ASIFA Central Secretary because I can type real fast. And Brad's did it very well, and I see some people out here in an angry chair. Shout out to you. There you go, Jason. Anyway, as you may have gathered, we are into animation, and the film we're going to see tonight, in beautifully restored, properly formatted, 4K resolution. Ooh, my toes are curled with glee. Does have some animation, courtesy of Tom Sullivan. It's my pleasure to have met this young man just a couple weeks ago. It seems like it's just, as you go to bed, you wake up, you play Rip Van Winkle, and suddenly, here you are. And when we say the ASIFA group is in its 60th year, you don't have to be 60 to be a part of it. It just looks like it. So anyway, it's just our way of keeping things going. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but do follow through if you're interested in animation. There's lots of stuff online with the ASIFACentral.org group, and you'll find a lot of things going on with the International Animation Day and everything else. But that's all I'm going to say. You're going to see amazing stuff tonight, and do stay later for the Q&A, because this man is a fountain of knowledge. Whether you want to know where Ray Harryhausen keeps his secrets, he's right here. He's right here. This guy. So without further ado, I'm handing this over to the one and only, the irreplaceable, the inevitable, the irreparable, the incredible Thomas Sullivan.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Hi. Has anybody in here seen Evil Dead? Not with an audience before. This is the first time you're going to see it with an audience. It's a different experience. It really is. When Evil Dead first came out, I lived in San Francisco. I'd go down to Market Street because they had all these great old grindhouse theaters that were just packed. And I've never seen audiences react to Evil Dead, to any film like they do to Evil Dead. People scream. I remember in Evil Dead 2 when the eye flew across the room into Cassie's mouth, a row of guys in front of me just stood up immediately. It's an involuntary reaction. People yell at the screen, Bruce, don't go in the, oh, idiot. Don't, anyway. But it all started back in 1978 or so. Back in my married days, my wife went to MSU, and I read about in the MSU school newspaper about the MSU Creative Filmmaking Society, which sounds really lofty and hoity-toity, but what it was Sam Raimi and his brother Ivan had figured out that if you live on campus, you could rent an auditorium about this size for $30 if you're a student. Everybody else, it's a couple hundred or something, but that would help foster and encourage student-led activities. So Sam would rent a room on a Friday night and then set up his little Super 8 projector, sound projector, and show Super 8 movie comedies that he'd made in junior high and high school with his little buddies. And they were all pretty much Three Stooges stuff. They loved the Three Stooges. Sam, Bruce, his buddy Scott Spiegel, and the other guys. And that's what Sam made, was goofy comedies, things like The Helping Hand. Remember the little hamburger helper guy? Well, he gets chewed up in the garbage disposal. It's hilarious. And but things like that. And then along came the 80s, and Sam's up at MSU, living in an apartment with Rob Tappert, and Sam was always making a movie. He was working on his feature-length comedy called It's Murder, a Super 8 feature-length film. He found a big reel where he could actually put an hour and a half worth of Super 8 film on one reel and run it through his Super 8 projector. And It's Murder was just another screwball comedy. Everybody's in it. Sam plays two parts, a guy in a wheelchair that I swear Heath Ledger saw this movie and based his character, the Joker, on. The makeup and the way Sam performs it and everything, it's kind of like that. But it's this insane film. Bruce is in it in small parts, and but it's a big screwball comedy thing. I did a poster for it and some sound effects. That's when I met Bruce, or Sam and those guys. And at that time, they got kicked out of their apartment because they were doing sound effects at 5 in the morning. And despite duct taping up mattresses to the wall of a neighbor they knew didn't like the noise, that didn't do it. And their parents had said, "Oh, that's enough funding for school for you guys." So they decided to kind of go all in and make a stab at making a film. Sam had been putting films together, nothing above a Super 8 movie. So first thing they tried was they filmed a scene in Super 8 and then paid to have it blown up into 35 to see what that would look like. Don't try it. What do they call the little globs of color in film? What's that called, Jim? The grain in the film, when they blew it up to 35, was like the size of bowling balls. So it was like this mash of whatever. Didn't work. So they went with 16 millimeter. And we had filmed Sam had never really made a horror film before. So to show potential investors they could tell a story and scare people, we made a short film called Within the Woods over a weekend. And I got to do the makeup. Bruce was the monster in that. I had an eyeball hanging down off of his eye and all that. He lived in the makeup all weekend because it took about 4 or 5 hours to put on. He didn't want to do that, so he just stayed in it. I just keep re-gluing it back on with spirit gum. And by the end of the show, Saturday night I was looking for him, and they said, "He's in the bathroom, leave him alone, he's having a hard time." And he had reached what they now call the latex point. When you put a mask on and everything, it's a lot of fun for the first couple hours, and then it's, we got to shoot all night with this. And then, and then the next day it's still on, and you can't eat, and you got to touch it up all the time, and you can't touch it, and things itch and scratch. And so by Saturday night, he'd reached the latex point where your body is basically rejecting the makeup like a bad organ. And he survived, but apparently he had to go into auditions with all these these scabs around his forehead where the spirit gum had like killed his skin, because it's not breathing when you put that glue on it. Now you know I wasn't nominated. They managed to raise $80,000 by showing Within the Woods. Has anybody seen that? It does show up on YouTube every once in a while. There's only really bad copies of it, but it's like a hardcore little horror film. I created the props for that as well. There's some daggers and things I made, and did the makeup and. Got to watch the entire process. And Sam Raimi is really an amazing guy. He was 18, 19 when I first met him, and he was already an encyclopedia of film technique. He could analyze a film like nothing I'd ever seen before. When we were heating up on Evil Dead, he thought we should all go see bad horror films, because his theory was that you could learn more from a bad horror film, more useful things to learn from a bad horror film than you could from a good one. I remember we went and saw the Toolbox Murders, which I'm not a big fan of. But we went and saw that, and he'd go, gee, here's the scene where they reveal the killer. And they had these many people in the room, and this room, and these props. And he could even tell you where the lights were, and what's the key light and the fill lights and all that stuff. And he'd say, well, with that, you could have done this. You could have taken the scene into a slightly different direction with all the same elements, but then pump it up more, and so that when you reveal this thing, everybody's freaking out. That kind of thing. He also said, steal from the best, just make it your own. And I grew up, there was an attempt to raise me Catholic. It failed horribly. I've illustrated covers for American Atheist magazine, so I've got a place in the seventh circle of hell now. But it just never made any sense to me. But but I still avoided violence. I remember when my sister and younger brother, we were like 10, 11, 12. We talked our babysitter into letting us stay up for the 10 o'clock show one night of Vincent Price's House on Haunted Hill. And there's a scene about a half an hour in when they're in the basement, and some little witch kind of scoots out. She like glides along like she's on a skateboard. I guess it's like actually a mannequin. It's a real woman, but pretending to be a witch mannequin. And she skies it, and that scared the crap out of us. And I swore off violence and horror films for the rest of my life. And so I didn't see horror films, and I had never seen Night of the Living Dead, anything like that. I had read a review of it in Reader's Digest magazine in '67 or whenever it came out, and a state representative had dropped her daughter off at the theater to go see Night of the Living Dead, and when she came out, her 13-year-old daughter was traumatized, and so this woman was going to start a campaign to stop people from seeing it. Well, that's good enough. I'm on that campaign. I want to see it. And so I never saw a horror film. And but then I get the job for Evil Dead. I think, well, I better find out what's going on with this. So I go see my first horror film, Dawn of the Dead. And everybody seen Dawn of the Dead? Okay, the first 20 minutes of that, I was freaking out. The police are raiding a building where inhabitants are hiding their zombie relatives because their brains can't handle it. And the police go in, and they're so jacked up on terror and adrenaline that they're shooting everybody. And I can't. I was freaking out. My calm little mind was overloading. And I wanted to leave, and I said, I got to sit there. I paid for it. I don't even want. And so a little while later, they escape from the TV station. They reload, they land and get some more fuel for the helicopter. And Jim Crut, playing a hippie zombie, climbs up on some boxes. The top of his head gets shaved off, and laughter, finally, good. And then we'll stick with it a little longer, and they land in the mall. And it's clearly a satire of human consumerism, of American consumerism. And so I'm in for the rest of the film. It's great. Loved it. And then you got to admire the amazing Tom Savini's astounding work. And Herculean task of that. And so I got it, that we don't have to terrorize people. And Sam Raimi's kind of approach was, hey, come on, kids, we got a barn. You can do makeup, you can do costumes, you guys can act. Let's put on a show. So it was kind of like that. And Sam isn't a dictatorial director. He's not a yeller and screamer like Michael Bay or Spielberg or those guys. It was very much, let's just have fun with this thing. Plus the fact that he gave me 3 weeks with the script. It was called Book of the Dead when we filmed it. He gave me 3 weeks with the script, which is for an effects guy, it's like, why don't you just shoot me now? Because that's not much time to really break down the script, figure out all the effects you're going to have to come up with, how you might do those effects, and then what supplies are you going to need, all in 3 weeks. So fortunately, I'm a genius, so it all worked out. But every night, it was, Sam, what are we shooting tomorrow? Well, we're going to shoot Shelley's arm getting cut off. Okay, where's the camera? That's going to be about 4 feet off the ground and focused right on her hand, which will be in this position, because that way I would know that I would have to cast Teresa Tilley, then known as Sarah York. Teresa and Hal Delrich were SAG actors, and Evil Dead was a non-SAG film, so they went under aliases, got caught, and it probably cost them more in fines than they made on the movie. Just for you SAG guys out there. And so I'd know where to put the molds lines so that they wouldn't show up, be in the middle of the frame or anything like that. And it all worked out for the most part. And I was always trying to bring more to the set than what was available, than what was requested. For example, when in that scene where Shelley gets her hand cut off, there's a close-up of the dagger and it's puking blood. That was an inspiration I had the night before. I thought if I could drill a hole through that little hilt, stick a tube in the back of the head, and have somebody blow blood out through a close-up, just one more goofy little shot. Like you stick people and it bleeds out through the mouth. Obvious when you think about it. And it's in the film. And the finale, the clay animation, was my idea. Sam's original vision of the ending was he wanted me to make balloon replicas of Cheryl and Scotty, and then fill them up with smoke and have them kind of leak smoke and deflate. And all I could think of is somebody's going to blow raspberries in the middle of that. For those of you that don't know that. And it'll get a laugh, and then somebody will come up to the next show just so he can blow raspberries at that scene. It'll be known as the raspberry scene. And also, for all the gore in the film up till that point, having people deflate with smoke seemed kind of anticlimactic. And I sold him on the idea that, well, a finale should be kind of like a fireworks finale, where for an hour you go, then at the finale, it's like, oh, we lit everything off that we haven't blown up yet. It's all going off in 5 minutes. And I thought it should kind of be like that. So I sold Sam on the idea of clay animation using the finale of George Pal's 1960 film, The Time Machine. Anybody see that with Rod Taylor? In it are time travelers in the year 802, 701, something like that. And he's attacked by Morlocks, these creatures, these cavemen in the future. He jumps into his time machine, kicks one of the guys, one of the Morlocks, breaks its neck against a wall. He jumps in the machine, pushes the lever forward so he can escape into the future while he recovers. Well, he looks up, and there's the Morlock decomposing via clay animation. And it's only 2 or 3 shots, and the skin comes off of it, the eyeballs fall out, and the skull falls down. And I thought, well, we could take that and turn it into an entire sequence. And I did about 11 or 12 little storyboard drawings that kind of showed that. And he knew a guy named Bart Pierce who liked stop motion animation, and also thought we could work together on it. And he knew more about cameras than I did. which would be a good thing. And so that became the plan. And then a couple months after we wrapped up the filming in Tennessee, where we shot most of the cabin stuff, Bart picked me up so we could go up to north of Lansing, where we were shooting some of the vine rape stuff of Ellen Sandweiss being attacked. And Bart and I hadn't met yet, and I got into the van and we started talking about the sequence, and Bart was dead set against using stop motion animation. I love it. I grew up on King Kong and Ray Harryhausen and all that, and I'd love to see this. And he said, but it's kind of passé now. It's the era of stop motion is dead, and my heart's breaking. And we should do it live action because it's more Rick Baker and Rob Bottin and Craig Reardon and guys like Dick Smith like that. And I want to do stop motion. So in this hour-long drive up north, we're just getting madder and madder at each other. And we show up at the house. We walk into the door. There's a whole room full of people, and Sam's there, and he goes, "Hey, do you guys have time to talk about the finale?" And we both erupted. And in the middle of it, and we're almost coming to blows. I mean, we completely opposing views on stop motion. And I had this kind of Reese's Pieces moment, where the guy with the chocolate bumps into the guy with the peanuts, and they become friends. And I thought, well, what if we did this? What if we did in-camera mats? Back in the days, we used to use film, and it's photosensitive, so anything, if you put a black mask in front of the camera that's unlit, you're actually, and you expose half of a frame, the other half is just unexposed film, even though you've run it through the film. Then you can switch the mat to the other side and, do crazy special effects and things. So that's what we were going to do, was film in clay animation, like the skin of the front of the face. Then we would have a mat that would black out. We'd put a piece of glass in front of the camera and paint out with black paint the head, the background, and the hair and all that. And we just animate one frame at a time, the clay animation meltdown part. Then we would rewind the film back to frame 0. Cameras have a counter. And we would change the mat so that the part we'd already filmed, the face in the foreground, was already would be blacked out. And then we would scrape off with a razor blade the black paint for the hair in the background. Then we'd have live action little strings pulling the hair and live action bile that I'd be blowing through a tube. And then you combine the live action. Then when you do the film, you've already combined these pieces of two exposures into one frame, and it all looks combined for those couple of frames. Now I have recently, my friend Bart, we hit it off great after that. We knocked it out of the park. Best collaboration I've ever had. We're still friends. He just had a brand new family, and those boys are now filmmakers. One of them worked on Family Guy, and the other Futurama. And but they've just got a new film that's coming out. They shot in the UP, and it worked out really well. And I have a. Would you be ready to show that? He made a short film that was a combination of the raw footage of what we shot. So you're going to see some stop motion shots that were never shown in the theater because they were too darn gross. And there's also a side-by-side comparison of what's in the film and what the extended version that we did. But if we can run that, I'll try to explain it. Tim Philo was the cameraman on the shoot. This is our test that we did. It's clay animation in the front, and then the hair is matted out. And on the same bit of film that this was, we also had footage of a whiteboard and me pouring corn syrup, food-colored blood down on it. And that footage became, we projected that onto Ash, and that's what's in the scene at the end of Evil Dead when Ash, the projector goes on and it's dripping blood on it. And, oh, multifaceted. Yeah, that's me. And we were shooting most of this in Bart's basement. And he had his son Drew, when we started, he had 2 weeks old, just came in from the hospital, and 3-year-old Brett. And they're really cool guys today. This is the first cut on one side, and then next to what's finally in the film. That's the lovely Ellen Sandweiss. There's the lovely Bruce Campbell. I'm the shoulder in the live action portion. That's the green weenie. Any guesses as to what that is? Oatmeal, very good. I'm blowing it through a tube. And a little green food coloring. I'm just puppeting the head up there with my hand from the back. And when you see the arms bursting out of people, that's me wearing Playtex gloves with chicken bones attached. I wanted to throw guts into the audience's lap. And I'm proud I did. You can't take that away from me. Choke on it. Now, remember this shot because I have a story about this. It's a lot of fun. It's about how 3 great minds collaborated on an amazing sequence. We have great benefits. Paid vacation after the first year. Slightly insane studio. Facing skills, manufacture state-of-the-art special effects sequence. Little or no money, remember that. If you're spending money on special effects, you haven't found the right sucker to do the special effects. Bart's kids did a film called, what was it called? Zombies escaped from a government facility, and I auditioned for one of the parts. I can't remember. Here we go. It's my understanding that's celery being broken. Oh, the storyboards. I'm also an illustrator, and I had to draw on everything. That's why we have a Book of the Dead. Sam didn't need pages drawn in it, but I felt I needed to. When that scene with the green weenie showed in France, somebody yelled out something about the Green Party, which was a thing back then, and it became like a political thing of revolution, which is why if I go to France, I'll be guillotined. More oatmeal. But everybody has a different guess. Is that grits? You know. And some of these vocal noises are Sam. He's really good at those. And he enjoys doing them. I heard him. Oh, yeah. Some of the guts were made out of, I made colons out of mashed together marshmallows. And I had a pink powder, like a makeup powder, and I powder them. And it was really fast and cheap just to mash them together and do a big string. And that's a Ravel skull I just scored and held together with clay, and a couple pieces I'd pull it apart with a string. But I'm glad that I got to realize my storyboards fairly closely. Oh, okay, I got to tell you this story. So, in the original King Kong, there's a scene during the fight with Kong and the T-Rex where Fay Ray is in the tree, and Kong knocks the tree, and the tree falls down. Except the way they shot it, it was the tree is in front of a rear screen projector, and they're projecting a movie, a previously shot film, into the background. And what the background is it's tilting upwards, because it's supposed to simulate the view of if you were falling backwards, as if the tree and the camera were locked together. So if the tree fell like this, you'd see the sky moving downward. And, oh, here's raw footage. That's my hands. And I love that shot, and I thought it'd be a cool shot to have the Cheryl model, and we'd hook up, put the whole thing on a big lever, and we could stop motion it moving backwards, so it looked like she's falling forward, and we'd see the interior of the studio, of the, you know, the ceiling of it, which matched what was in the cabin. And now see, that's a mat, and the first shot was the arm coming out that way. So we filmed this twice. I'm going this way, and then we filmed it this way. And where the front arm moves backwards into the mat, you can see it disappear. So we can only use, you know, a couple of frames of that. So anyway, so Bart figured out how to rig a truck jack that had a big screw that we could animate moving the Cheryl model forward. And then he had a brilliant idea that for the head hitting the ground and exploding, we had a section of the floor, and we turned it upside down at about a 45-degree angle. And then I built a fake head that was held together with clay, and we packed it full of bloody dog food, the interior of the skull. And then we had the camera pointing up, so that when the head hit the floor, it would explode and dramatically go after the camera. And we had a piece of glass in front of the camera that quickly moves. And so we had the shot where the head falls forward, then a shot where it hits the floor, of course it's right side up to the audience, and just explodes and shatters. If we shot it regular way, it wouldn't have had as impressive an explosion. Then Sam sees those two shots, And he says, well, we'll get Bruce back and we'll put him in his flannel shirt, which if you're using our corn syrup, food colored, and instant coffee recipe for blood, it stays shiny for years. It's hard as a rock, but it stays fresh looking. So we put Bruce in this old stinky shirt, because you can't wash it, right? Because it's got blood on it. And would be continuity where it was when we were filming in Tennessee. And yes, and so he's got that and he's laying on the ground, and then Sam Raimi next to the camera has a handful of bloody dog food. And he goes, "Hey, Bruce." Oh, it was probably more like, "Hey, Bruce," and because Bruce loves things like that. And so it was those 3 pieces of film that just really send it over the top and give the film a cool ending. And that's the original footage of the test. And I believe that's it. Thanks. And that was that was 3.5 months of my life going by in 2.5 minutes of film. That's the trials of stop motion animation. But I'm really proud of that. Bart and I got along great after that, and or during that, and we're still pals today. And wow, what a trip! But when Evil Dead came out, it was kind of interesting because had they submitted it to the MPAA rating board, it would have gotten an X rating, which would have made it look like a porno film, which it's not. I think there's about 24 frames of a breast in there. And, well, 2 different breasts. And, but, it's not pornographic or anything, or really erotic. And, but for the violence and everything, it's really over the top. We had no discussions at all about what can we get through and what can't. We were just trying to throw it all in. I remember asking Sam when we started, "Sam, how gross do you want this to be?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" "Well, if you have somebody stabbed with a knife, you could have the bad guy come up behind them and pretend have a fake knife and stab person with their back to the camera, and then they turn around, and then there's the stage knife is already in there leaking blood. Or we can show the knife going in front of the camera with the blood, Well, which one can you do? Well, if you give me enough time, we can show the blood. Well, let's do that, make it bloody. And so I just kept trying to think of how we can make it grosser and grosser. At one point, I did get a little nervous about all the blood. So I thought, what if they were, because they turned into demons, what if their physiology has changed so that sometimes at the point when they're vomiting things, it could be milk or yellow stuff or green stuff, And so we went with that. I just would show up with a different colored group of biles to, the food coloring gross stuff, it worked. And that became a thing. And those poor ladies with the makeup, they all knew what was in store. The first day I met them, I had to do face castings, just the front face, not full heads, so I could do some makeup appliances and things. Originally, my idea for the makeup was that being ancient Sumerian, which I knew nothing about, even though I lived on a MSU campus, I figured that's kind of like pre-Egyptian, and I'd seen the Charlton Heston 10 Commandments several times, so I thought when it came to lettering the Book of the Dead, what would those hieroglyphs behind Yul Brynner at the palace? It's like eagles and hawks and dogs and snakes and things. So I incorporated that into the makeup designs. And I did some sculptures of like a dog version of Hal and a hawk version for one of the girls. And a snake version, and I showed them to Sam. They were sculpted in clay over these faces, these plaster faces, and he said, "It's starting to look a little like, a little too much like Planet of the Apes." And I go, yeah, you're right. I won't steal from John Chambers. I'll steal from Dick Smith. So one of the first makeup designs was Betsy Baker, and we decided that let's kind of make the Deadite thing like a parody of their character. And where Betsy was coming off as a, goody two-shoes and the sweet little girl and all that, that will make her kind of like an idealized doll. And Sam's mom ran a Lulu's Lingerie. That's not her name, but that was the name of her store. And so Sam had access to several mannequins, female mannequins that we used. And I made a face casting of one of the mannequins and then turned it into a latex mask. And I glued that onto Betsy's face for part of it. There was one stage where she just looked dolled up with, rosy cheeks and kind of idealized features, but with the eye, with those horrible contact lenses. And then I had a more extreme version, which had the mannequin face on her. And but the first one I did for her was like a test, and it was veins radiating out from her eyes. There's a scene of that. It was the first makeup shot we did, where Ash is dragging Betsy out of the front of the porch towards the graveyard. And if you look closely, that's the veins radiating out from her eyes look. But it's close to see. But when we were shooting that, it was like 5:30, and sunup was like at 5:35, so it was just starting to get light. And we had to shoot it really quick. And it was all in one take, and Betsy just sold it. It was the first really horror scene, the first scary scene that we shot. And Betsy had everybody speechless, especially me, because it's so great when you've got actors who not only wear your makeup, but they sell it. Where it was actually intimidating to watch her scream and writhe around like that. It's a great performance. And I really have to salute them all for doing that. And but then later we decided to do the doll thing with with Betsy. She played Linda. And we moved the eye radiation thing to Shelley. And Cheryl became a witch. But actually what I did was I based Cheryl's makeup on Linda Blair's makeup for the Exorcist, which is kind of whitish. And she had some cuts and things gauze had been put over her face because of the vine attack. And I made those kind of ickier versions of themselves. So you can't really tell where the skin ends and the gauze, begins. And also those contact lenses were things from hell. Today they're nice, soft little things. In those days, it was like you took a $50 and punched it into a hemisphere. It was like plastic that thick. It was like really as thick as a quarter. And then you have to jam it over your eye. I remember the ophthalmologist gave me warnings. You can only wear these things for 15 minutes at a time. And you have to keep them clean and keep the eye hydrated, because that's why we blink, is keep our eyes from drying up like raisins so the crows don't take them. And well, of course, that sterile solution for cleaning these things, that was gone after the first day. And we were working on a set in Tennessee out in the boonies where there were no windows when we first got the cabin, no windows, no doors, no electricity, no plumbing. What else do you need no electrical stuff at all. We had to haul that all down in there. And so what did they use to rinse out the contact lenses with? Well, they had plenty of fresh coffee on set, which also do things to the capillaries in your eyes because it, expands them. Another reason I was never nominated. And so it was really difficult. Plus, they can't see through these things, and they're all doing their own stunts. And so like Ellen falling backwards into the trap door that only goes down about 4 feet. And she's caught by Rob Tappert and somebody else with a blanket, just to soften it, not to try to catch her in it. And I'm just, from the angle I was at, I couldn't see how Ellen didn't crack her head open on the thing, but she just flew herself back. I mean, this was insane to make. And fortunately, it was a really cool vibe on the set. It was like summer camp without adult supervision. The food was pretty awful, but the camaraderie was great. There weren't any jerks. No, Bruce and Sam and Rob, everybody got along. There was marijuana intake, mostly by me on the set. And made it into a page of the Evil Dead, just to show how evil it is. And I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. He just needed a knife for the dagger, and I thought, well, I love Alien, and I thought, what if the dagger was sticking out of somebody's chest? It kind of looked like the chest burster. So I kind of based the hilt on the chest burster. I took took a piece of aluminum, the widest piece I could find at the local hardware, which is like 1.25 inches. I ground it down into a weird point, and took a handful of celluclay. It's a ground paper mache sculpting material. You add water, and I sculpted that into a simple shape, and I had a Revell model kit of a skeleton, 12-inch kit, and I just started sticking pieces into it. Didn't bother to glue them together until I ran out of skeleton parts. Then I went to the store, bought a chicken, cooked that up, ate that, boiled the parts, the bones, dried them off in the thing, and then glued those on there, and instant movie history. The Book of the Dead, like I said, Sam, in the script, the book was described as having some kind of animal skin for a cover, which I took as leather, and with a few letters from an ancient alphabet. Has anybody seen the 1960s film, The Equinox? It stars the guy who went on to play Herb Tarlick. It's his first film. But it's kind of like Evil Dead in that it's 5 kids out in the woods and they meet some stop motion demons and things, but there's a book in it, and it looks like it has some kind of animal skin for the cover with 4 or 5 letters from an ancient alphabet. Sam hadn't seen the Equinox at the time, but I had, and I said, Sam, that book's already been used. But the book, it wasn't really described in what the book was. It was just like a MacGuffin type of thing. It was something you had to have. And I asked Sam, is the Book of the Dead a book of evil? Oh yeah, it's filled with demons and spells and stuff. And somebody knows what Sam Raimi sounds like. And so I, being an illustrator, and I love to draw on everything, I thought, well, I'll piece together some little pages and bind them together in a technique I'd learned in the 2nd grade using grocery bag paper, because if you have no money, that's a great, that looks just like real leather. And also decomposes just by air after a couple of decades, which it did. But I bound the pages together with that, and so I had, and the cover was, I had these molds of the actors' faces, and I took Hal Delrich's and put about 10 layers of latex, let each layer dry, and added another one until I had like a skin, and then I just glued that around a piece of corrugated cardboard, and that was the cover. And I colored it in with some raw umber acrylic paint, and that was the cover of the book. Then I glued the pages in with the grocery bag paper as the binding, and then took that with me to Tennessee. And after every night when I'd finished my other chores and had the props or fake arms or legs or whatever baking in the oven, I'd sit around the kitchen table, smoke a joint with Josh Becker, and we'd discuss film. And anybody know who Josh Becker is? He's a director. He directed He directed the pilot episodes of Xena, the Warrior Princess, Hercules, the Legendary Journeys. Got to direct Anthony Quinn in the pilot episode. And he figured out how to work with Quinn because Quinn, if you had to film his close-ups first. Because if you didn't, if you filmed the master shots, he would start walking all over the place. And then it's impossible to get your shots done in the time you need to because you've got to cover everything. And so he learned to film his close-ups first because then he knows he has to stay there. It's one of those crazy things because Anthony Quinn, I'm sure by the time in that career, eats young directors for breakfast, you know. And they love screwing around with people like that. It's kind of fun. And I also directed the pilot episode of Jack of All Trades. Anybody, Bruce Campbell's and all of these things. Anybody see Jack of All Trades? YouTube the opening to Jack of All Trades. It's the best opening for a TV series ever. It's a rousing bar ballad. And I swear you want to join the Marines when you see this thing. It's great. But so he did that, and he is an encyclopedia of film knowledge, and you'll lose any argument you have with him because he has sights and he's seen everything several hundred times. And but it was a kind of a cool crew like that. How are we doing for time?
Fantastic. How are we doing for time, guys? Who's ready for the movie? Yeah. Nope, another hour of this. Sorry, that's just what it is. It's Tom's day. That's what we're doing. So what we'll do is we're going to screen a little bit of stuff, about 10 minutes worth of short film.
Perfect.
And then we'll screen the movie. You haven't seen this yet,
Not
have
in
you?
4K, no.
Not the new reconditioned from Grindhouse releasing.
With the new sound by Joe LaDuca.
Yes, Joe did the sound. Even I'm not sure how to feel about that, but they took the old mono-aural mix and separated out all the audio, so it's on all different tracks now. And then Joe also rescored it, so I guess we're going to find out how that turned out. We're going to get started here in the next 60 seconds. There we go. Okay, that's what we'll do. I was like, what was that? So, and then afterwards we'll do a Q&A. I think he's probably answered 99% of our questions already, but we'll make it as long as you need to, and then you'll still be signing stuff afterwards.
Absolutely. I want to meet everybody, so yeah.
Yeah, so I'll get a chance to meet and talk with Tom. All right, thank you all very much. How you doing?
Well, that never looked better.
Yeah, how about that,
And I
huh?
love the new sound. It's amazing.
Yeah, that is
it up a
something
lot.
else.
Wow.
It's kind of terrifying. It's really still, it just really holds up. Anything about this time around that you hadn't expected?
How sharp it looked like we just filmed it.
Yeah.
Like in 35. That's amazing
Okay.
what they did with a 16 millimeter. Wow. And the finale looked amazing to me.
Yeah,
Really
that's
sharp.
incredible. Holy cow. Still kind of putting it together. I'm really impressed by that.
Oh, thanks. Reminded me of a couple of things. Oh, first of all, it's a Q&A. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone are there any questions that have ever been not asked about this? Like, what happened to the garter snakes in the oatmeal and the stuff? What did they just kind of hang out and went, this is delicious, and then ran off again? or?
You probably missed it in the shot because it goes by fast.
Sure.
But there were two shots where snakes, cockroaches, and the biles gush out of the eyes and mouth of the skulls at the end.
Right.
And those were what were removed.
Okay.
We had these tubes, golf tubes for your thing.
Yeah.
We had those going back through the back of the head, and those were matted out then.
Okay.
And with plungers, and I would put the snakes and cockroaches in the front, then a wad of cotton, and then the bile. So when you pushed it, all kind of gushed out. And we had cockroaches from MSU. We had like a big box of
Those
them.
big old Madagascar things.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
geez.
boy, they're nasty.
Yeah, things aren't okay. They aren't okay at all.
And boy, But that was, but I remembered that some other things that I volunteered for the show. When Ash...
They didn't pay you extra for it?
When Ash cuts Linda's head off,
Yeah.
and her head falls into the foreground, it took, there was a plaster head of Linda. It took 20 times to get it so it would fall and stay.
Sure.
I kept having to dig her a deeper well for it to catch into.
That was a fantastic edit, the way that lands.
Yeah, and then I had the dummy, the headless dummy that was going to fall on Bruce in the background.
Yeah.
And I also had a stump of the neck.
Okay.
From another shot that wasn't used, or it was used, but I used it again. And I put tubes up through the torso of this thing so that when the headless torso landed on Bruce, we could have blood gushing out into his face. One of those things I brought on the set and Sam loved. And
I'm sure there's been many questions about the recipe for the blood, but do you recall what you used?
oh yeah, sure. You take a container of red food coloring, dump in a whole large bottle of red food coloring, 1 drop of blue, no more than 1.
Right.
That deepens it, takes the orange out of it.
Yeah.
And then you mix up about it depends on, if you've got the full bottle, like a half a cup or...
So, corn syrup.
Corn syrup, food coloring, red and 1 drop of blue.
1 drop of blue.
And then you mix up instant coffee into a paste with water and stir that in. And what that does is it makes the blood opaque because you can't see through blood, but the Caro syrup stuff. And it also...
That's what's for breakfast.
and then some people use bug sprayers. Like I've seen Japanese movies where people get their heads cut off and it's a bug sprayer just...
Right.
And that isn't realistic for me. If you use blood tubes, you can fill up the tube with the fake blood and then get a couple cups in your mouth, and you can blow that, and you can get, most shots and gore things are just a couple of seconds.
Sure.
So you can get a couple of good heartbeats of blood gushing out, during the take. And so I'm doing that. So for, 7 months, I'm blowing coffee syrup.
Sure.
Through, I haven't had a cup of coffee since then. I used to love, it's just awful.
Some people came here for like the animation part, but they're getting all the extras for free. How do you like them apples?
Yeah.
Any other questions, David?
Marshall, Michigan. Yep, I was born there and then moved away when I was about 3 months old. Expensive rent.
Yeah.
No, then moved back for my high school years. My mom's family was from there. And moved back just in time to meet a bunch of people I'd only see at reunions. Same town, Marshall, lived downtown Marshall. And Rob Tappert's family had a farm south of Marshall. And that's where we filmed some of the graveyard stuff, Linda getting her head cut off.
Okay.
And the basement things as well.
Yes.
So it's kind of neat. When you see Bruce in the cabin going into the basement, he can go down about this far. And then when you see him on the stairs, that's like 5 months later in Marshall in the basement. And it's just the way they cut things together. And all that.
Right.
Kind of
that's
movie
incredible.
magic.
Yes, Will.
So going into the film, all these techniques you used for making the blood, like blood spurt and everything, did you already know how to do this, or was it a matter of just trying out different things?
It was pretty much that, because every problem has a couple of solutions, and you go with the one you've got on hand, and that works best. But boy, I just could not see spending lots of money on this. I remember asking Rob Tappert years after we filmed it, what was my budget for Evil Dead? And he said, what budget?
Yeah.
I figure it was about $400 till we got to, just for Caro syrup. There was 1 gallon kit of foam rubber that I used for the arms and legs and things like that, and a couple of quarts of latex, and acrylic paints, things like that. I didn't know about rubber mask grease paint, which I'm really glad, because I painted the props, the arms and legs with rubber mask, and it preserved the foam rubber and the mask. So the masks are still viable, And,
Still have them now?
I still do, yeah.
Wow. All right.
And
And the book, how many books did you? I'm sure it's been out there, but how many books did you burn up?
One book for the fire, and then I still have, and then there was a clay book that I still have the frame for.
Okay.
That was the stop motion animation book for the fireplace.
Yes.
And then I still have the original book. The cover's kind of melted, but the pages are still intact.
Yeah, just a little light reading at night.
Count them? Is that what you meant? No. No, but there's a lot. And I'm really glad I got to contribute something to how the final film came up. Like the finale, it would have been a completely different movie if somebody else was there. It's loaded, yeah.
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 That's amazing. Yes, sir.
Did you make Ellen Sandler's float?
Funny question.
She was possessed.
When we were making
oh.
this, do you remember Salem's Lot?
Yeah.
With
I do
Starsky or
anyway.
Hutch was in it?
Yeah.
And
Probably both.
we were watching that in the basement one night. There was a couple of hits. It was like 2 or 3 parts, wasn't it? Was it one movie or two?
It was a TV movie, yeah.
It was a TV
like
movie.
2-part, I think.
And we were watching it, and it was the part where Reggie the vampire or somebody was floating in front of a window. And just when that scene was coming on, Sam came in and watched it for a second, and he goes, they've got that person, there's a big cantilever, counterweighted, and they built a rig in front of the window.
Yeah.
And we're doing that with Ellen tomorrow night.
Okay.
And so he saw that immediately. I told you, he steal from the best, make it your own.
Yeah.
So he had Steve Frankel and the guys come up with some 2x4s and some horrible contraption to hoist her up. And they filmed that the next night. They just stole right from Salem's Lot, and there it is.
Perfect.
So
That's
yeah,
incredible.
we were just pulling this stuff right out of the air. Just what can we do to pump it up and make it look great?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I've got them. Yeah. And I copyrighted them, and I saw prints of them and things like that.
Hey, Jeff, can you put that other image up? It's perfect segue. We didn't plan that at all. We got a special surprise for you. Maybe. So if you just see this logo here, and it's kind of a 3-dimensional neon on the edge of Twilight Zone. Maybe he's not paying attention, Jeff. Can you put that picture up from the 10 o'clock p.m. thing that
Does
I
everybody
gave you?
know about fake shemps?
There you go. Oh, well, you tested me, brother. Like we both whipped around. It was like it's like Ash doing this blinking thing. Well, yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, that's my cover for my script of the Book of the Dead.
Yeah. Now, if you notice the date on the bottom there, that's 40 years tomorrow.
Oh wow.
Did you think that 40 years ago, when you just whipped this out in 5 minutes, that you would be looking at this at the world's greatest film festival 40 years later?
I had a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, you got the lotto numbers?
I hadn't met any. I don't think they'd even cast the actors yet, but I kind of got them kind of close.
Yeah.
Looks like Hal.
Yeah.
I always thought Hal was going to be the big star out of this. I thought, here's Chris
He isn't?
Pratt,
Is it? Oh.
30, 40 years earlier.
Alan's great. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anyone else in that ever go anywhere?
Well, right after we made this, Betsy Baker made a made-for-TV movie with where she's marrying John Malkovich in his first film role, and Carl.
Sandberg?
No.
Perkins?
Nope. Carl Malden was in it and played her father. And he was a reporter or something and had to not reveal a source or something and caused a lot of drama.
Sure.
But,
Now, was I'm remembering this correct? Was Holly Hunter possibly going to be in this, but she couldn't be, or was that the second one?
That may have been the second one, but
Okay.
maybe even later, because I don't think they met. I'm not sure when they met her.
Sure.
Joel Cohen was one of the assistant editors on this.
Yes.
And so Sam met them through there. And Sam's in Hudsucker Proxy.
Yes.
Behind a glass window, he's pitching a thing with John Cameron, I think, also one of the Detroit gang.
The guy who played Ash, what happened to him? What was his name? What was that guy?
Named after a suit.
Yeah. Anyway, so is there any other questions or? Is that, come on, David. Jeez, what the? No, please. David's with Michigan Weekender over in Jackson, Michigan. So. Oh wow. This is the first. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you teach anything on special effects? I know that everything today's done through CGI, but do you teach practical special effects?
No, it's the materials are completely different. I was using foam rubber and latex. Now it's silicone and gelatin and all these other fancy things, and infinite varieties of them. Boy, the mold making, there's photos of me making a mold of Bruce's arm for Within the Woods.
Oh yeah.
And if anybody who knows anything about making molds, you know, I don't know what the hell I was doing. But yeah, it was one of those.
Yeah.
There was when I did a full head casting of Linda, and for some reason the plaster, I didn't know about alginate. You know what alginate is?
Yeah.
It's this, when they're making molds of your teeth, it's that MIDI stuff they put in there. It sets up really fast. Mm-hmm. Well, you put that over somebody's head, and then you
Doom Jello.
do halves with plaster strips. Well, I didn't know anything about that.
Sure.
So I
Pulled
just
all
put
her hair
the
out,
plaster up there, Vaselined her face a lot, and put the plaster up there, and it caught onto her hair. So when she's in this two-part mold, and it's caught up in her hair, the best I could do was prop the front part of the mold up, and then with a single-edged razor blade, stick it up here so I could just kind of trim the hair that was caught. And
I'm sure she appreciated that.
yeah.
What we do for art. I saw one more hand go up over here. Was it? Yes, sir.
I read in Bruce Campbell's book that the Caro syrup in his shirt got so dried out and sticky that it shattered one day.
Yeah, it turns to glass, basically. And the plus side is a year later, it's still fresh looking. But yeah, but it's crusty and all that. And yeah, it's just... Boy, I really worry about actors because a lot of times, like
I don't.
putting on a
that's
Batman
what-
suit, you know, like Christian Bale, after like a half hour in the Batman suit, I hear you just want to steer clear because they're not comfortable. You know, putting a suit on like that, you're losing 5 quarts of water a day. That's a medical emergency. Plus, you're trying to act in something which is incredibly uncomfortable.
I don't know. I got a thing with the gasoline and the straight edge razor blade whipping around.
Yeah, it just gets better all the time.
Fantastic. Well, we have something we'd like to give to you.
Oh.
I don't know where it is in the building. Oh, my wife knows. So we were just going to stay in here and be cool again.
But does everybody know the story behind fake Shemps? In the credits for Evil Dead, there's the fake Shemps. And like I said, Sam and Rob were huge. Sam, Bruce, and Scotty were huge Evil Dead fans. And in one of the, or Three Stooges fans, and in one of the episodes, Shemp Howard had passed away in the middle of one of these shorts. So they got some 6-foot guy and put a wig on him and, hey, come on, Shemp. And he literally I've seen it, he literally puts his arm up, and then they would dub a voice in. Well, that became, when an actor wasn't available, like at the finale of shooting things in the at the cabin. For example, when they bring Linda out to put into the grave, the actors were gone. Betsy Baker was gone. So they found a diner that was open all night, and they waited for the waitress. They said, hey, do you want to be in a movie? We'll put you up in makeup and bury you out in the woods.
Oh, yeah, please. That was extra 10% for that.
Yeah, we don't know each other, do we? No. Come on with us. We're from Michigan.
Right.
And
well, yeah. And you said filmmaker, so that's just the carte
so
blanche.
she's a fake Shemp. You know, they just put her in the makeup and the wig and buried her, and I guess now she's famous.
So we got this going here. We wanted to do something to honor your contributions to Michigan film. and to genre film altogether. It's from Thriller Chiller and ASIFA. Thank you very much for all that you do. We call it the Boomstick OG because, hey, that's what it is. It looks good. I love it. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Yes. Wear it in good health. You can wear it in the remake. And that's for all the worms and the cockroaches and stuff they go inside.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose you'll be here for a little bit more
I will.
to talk to people and
Please
sign
come
stuff. If you want to catch the end of the movie, it's probably halfway through over there. Otherwise, I guess this concludes the lovely events of Thriller Chiller 2019, Blade Runner year. All right, thank you all very much.
Thriller Chiller may be ending, but the awesome isn't. We're hosting a talk about Stranger Things here at this theater on Monday night at 6 o'clock. If you want to come out and talk movies with us, that's called Fountain Street Church does a monthly event called the Screen Club, where we come out and we, so far it's been about television shows that are based on books. And this one is Stranger Things, so we hope to see you Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. We did.
Thank you all very much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.